Hello and welcome back to Radiantly Rooted. I am your host, Rachel Hupp, and I have a very special guest with me today. Her name is Marla Cantor, and she has been practicing yoga for 30 years now. She was drawn to it, actually came across it by accident, didn't even know what yoga was at the time. And life kind of led her down the path to yoga teacher training. She didn't really want to teach at first, but her yoga teachers needed subs. She said they twisted her arm to get her to sub, and the rest is history. So, Marla, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Rachel.
I'm so excited to talk to you because our paths, it sounds like, are kind of similar in the sense that we both came across yoga by accident. Can you tell us a little bit more about your story and how you actually stumbled across yoga?
So I was about 40 years ago, and our local county building was offering a yoga class, and yoga wasn't very popular then, but I was called to do it. And in all honesty, I have no idea why. I went in with this attitude of, oh, I like to dance and I like to tap dance and I like to dance. I didn't know what it was, but I knew I wasn't going to like it. And so I did the first practice, and I felt it immediately when I went home, reaching for dishes in the cabinet. I felt longer. So I was really curious to go back. So that's how it started. And started going a couple of times a week. A yoga studio opens up, and then a second yoga studio, and then a third, maybe like 10 miles out. And they went to every one of those studios. So then there was a teacher training that was offered in my town. And little did I know was that I had to learn history and anatomy. I just wanted to bend, I wanted to do more poses. And I almost quit right there when we were in our life. Oh no, I have to study anatomy and all that. So I went to my teacher training. There was about a dozen of us, and that was about 25 years ago. And there weren't a whole lot of yoga teachers then. And I was the last one out of the 12 of us to sign up to teach a class because the trainers had opened up a studio and everybody was signing up. And we sort of followed one another in the last very many years. I'm the only one that's teaching now. But yeah, so that's how it happened. And I feel so lucky that I found it because it's the only thing, with the exception of raising my son, that I've done consistently for so long.
And that's such an amazing story. And I love how you shared that, how yoga has evolved over the years and how it's so easy to find a yoga studio now for most of us. And if we can't, we can find it online. But that wasn't necessarily the case 25 years ago.
Yeah, and it was pretty different then. It kind of morphed in some not so good ways and then some good ways. But I think that people that endeavor to teach, maybe always the greatest teachers, but their heart's in it, and I think almost everybody deserves a chance to throw themselves in the fire and get out there and teach if their heart is in it. So, yeah, so I feel really lucky with that. And to this day, I'm teaching large private groups. Most of them are my community that I've picked up in the last 30 years well, 25 years of teaching. And when COVID came and a lot of the places I was teaching closed down, I started my own classes. And I have this really lovely following where on Mondays we go out for coffee afterwards. And yeah, so I feel really, really lucky that I get to do this.
And that's amazing. I love the community aspect of what you are offering. It's not just the class, but then taking it beyond the mat and out into the world as well, and really building that sense of community and support. That's really magical.
Yeah. So one of the things that I do, I don't have nobody could drop into my class. They have to get in touch with me. They have to be kind of approved just because, well, it's a large class to make sure that there's room and they're on the level that we are, which is actually kind of gentle. It's mostly older people. We're not looking to tighten our quads. Well, I think everybody there is really looking for the stillness. They show up in their yoga mat. I think that a lot of them are in search of the quiet. They're not
Yes.
just make anything happen. And that's really the goal of yoga. So that's what I was surrounded with in my classes. Yeah.
Yes. I think that's so powerful. It really is that it brings us to a place within ourselves where we can find that space of stillness. And for so many of us with life and the hustle and bustle, that's the only chance within our day that we do have that space to be still and to find that sense of quiet within.
Yeah. And it's not always easy. Sometimes I say to my students, that will start in just a centering on our back. And I'll say, it's not easy to do nothing. It's not easy to think less, but it's in that quiet, in that stillness that we become softer and less armored. And so my fan club, they get that, they get that. They're at the time that they get that. I will also teach restorative yoga. And if anybody is familiar with that, it's really super, super chill, lots of props. And on it, it's 2 Sundays a month. I have 30 to 40 people show up, young and old, but people are in search of the quiet. And
I
they're,
think you're so right.
and they're tapping into it. So good for them.
And I know you shared something with me about helping people to feel safe and to feel held in your classes. So, what would that safety feel like in the body in your experience?
I think part of the safety separate from the body is that I'm approachable. Okay. And
Yeah.
even in my classes, if I teach in a health club, I remember people's names. Or I'll ask again. And I have this little rule I get to ask 3 times. And if they disappear one day, I get to start over again. You can ask the names. So I think that but being acknowledged. I always start with a little bit of a word of wisdom. Sometimes it's funny, it's about me or what's going on in the world. And so most of my classes, I feel a gentle yoga, even if it's a flow class and a little bit stronger. I think that gentle doesn't always mean easy, but teaching it in a kind, a soft, mindful way where everybody has some success and some challenge. So presence. I think people feel the presence.
Yes, I love that. I love that. And I love something I've seen you say quite a few times and share on your social media is that gentle is the new advanced. Could you add a little more into that?
Yeah. Well, that's part of that. It's not always easy to do nothing, or it's not always easy to move slow.
Yeah, you're exactly right. When I first came to yoga, I came to it for the fitness aspect. I wanted the intense power workouts, right? And then over time, I realized, like you mentioned, that sense of presence and that it's something you carry with you beyond the mat. And as my practice has evolved over the last 30 years as well, I'm more in that space where I'm seeking that stillness and that presence within more so than like you said, I'm not trying to tighten my hamstrings. I'm trying to connect with my soul, my heart, my body, my mind.
Well, let's understand. I mean, there's a yin and a yang. Yang is making something happen, yin is allowing. And when you're younger and you come in, you're striving because we're in a world where we're graded at school, A, B, C, D, or we're getting raises. So we're always striving to make something happen. It's funny because sometimes in my slower classes, like my yin or restorative, I'll say, hey, it's okay to be a C student, you know? So but one of the things I think about when, and it's not just yos, physical fit people too that want to sweat and want to burn, particularly if you're new at yoga. I always thought, well, then they're taking the back door in because it's not about the body, it's about the being. And that will lead them to that part. If it does, great. And if it doesn't, different strokes for different folks.
That's so powerful. It's not about the body, it's about the being. I love that.
Yeah. I had a teacher that said that about 30 years ago. I went right home and I wrote that. And I wrote it down. I never forgot that. Because like when I was growing up in New York City, I was never picked to be on a team. I didn't like gym. Um, and the thing with yoga that I found was that there was no, when they said there's no competition expectation, I felt that.
Yes.
And I felt like I was playing a soul game of Twister.
Uh-huh.
I love it. Nobody bothered me to do. Nobody was blasting music. Nobody said, "Give me another down dog. Give me another." It was gentle, and so yeah. Like I said, I'm just really lucky that I found that and that it resonated for me because I was able to do it
I love that.
and doing it and have success. Yeah.
And so you shared with me that the deeper and the more spiritual aspects of the practice over time led you to develop an interest in other religions, and you decided to look deeper into other religions. And then one of your yoga students actually asked you to officiate their wedding. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and the pathway that it led you down?
Yeah, so she just said, "Would you officiate my wedding?" And I'm like, "No." And so then, so I have a really good friend, Reverend Claire Francis, and she does a lot of weddings. And I told her, and she said, "Well, you can go to the courthouse. Virginia's very strict about who can do weddings, but you can go down and you can get, it's not ordained, but you can get certified for the day." So I said, "Oh," and Claire said, "You should do it. I'll help you. I could show you how to structure a wedding, so on and so forth." So throw yourself in the fire. That's my motto, right? See, I said to the gal, I said, "Yeah, okay, I'll do it." And so there's a lot involved in doing it, and I did it, and I was really nervous. And before I started to do it, I was like, I don't know why I'm doing this. Why did I throw myself in the fire? But the moment I started, you can feel the love and the hope because the bride's in her dress and the mother has a dress, and the mother picked out a great dress. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
yeah.
Like I could feel the vibe. Grandma said, "Oh, my granddaughter's getting married. First one, they had to get the best dress." And the energy was just so happy. So when I was done, I just like, wow, I was just surrounded by hope and love. And I walked out. If I could have jumped up and clicked my heels, I would have done that. But I knew that I had nailed it. But I have a system. Would like to share my system with you?
Yes, yes,
Absolutely.
please.
How I build a ceremony. So the first thing that I do is I meet with my couples on Zoom to see if we're a nice fit. And I always tell them, don't make a decision tonight if you want to work with me. Take some time, but I'm going to speak to you as if I am your officiant. So, what I do, if they decide to work with me, the first thing I do is I send them a questionnaire separately to fill out separately so I can learn about them. And a lot of couples really like to do it. And a lot of couples haven't been to many weddings, or they certainly haven't been married before. So it kind of shows you the system of a wedding. But some of the questions are having Jimmy, what are you looking forward to? What are the things that make you laugh? So I put the wedding together, and then I send them choices for the declaration of intent, which is the I do's. That's what I'm bound by law. They have vows if they don't want to write it themselves. You just got married, so you know. And then there's the ring blessing, and then there's the ring words exchange, so on and so forth. And they pick all that from probably about 25 or 30 choices that they send. They can pick what I send, they can flop it around, they can write their own. But what I do is I build their love story into the address when I talk about love and commitment. And I always try to put something that one doesn't expect the other one to say in terms of their love story about each other or a little secret about them. I just have to tell you, I did a wedding this weekend, and one of the things that the gentleman he had said in his thing was how he admired her for always learning and being curious, and that she even knew how to name 1,000 Pokemon men. And I said that, and like she just laughed because it was funny. So, yeah, so I just try to build the ceremony and tell their love story. And I I think that was always good, but I think I'm even really good now because I'm less nervous than I used to be. Like I'm holding that space. It's like a yoga class. It's breath by breath, and your weddings is heart by heart or story by story. You
Oh,
know,
I love that.
yeah, you're holding that space. You're reading a room. It's presence.
What would you say it was about your prior experience with yoga and your ongoing experience with yoga that really helped to prepare you for holding space in such an emotionally charged moments like weddings?
Mm, well, it's kind of the same, just that you are holding space. You're the calm in the room. You can read the room. You're setting a tone for the moment, whether it's in a yoga class or in doing weddings. And I thought a lot about like when I'm up at like big fancy wedding, and I do elopements and simple weddings too. I said, how did I end up here? And I realized growing up in New York, I grew up in the projects. We played in the streets all the time. Well, I was never by myself. We always had community. We were doing hula hoops together or skating or making up games. We didn't have the technology. We just played in the streets, but I always was surrounded by people. And I think that I was a little bit of a leader in that. Like I organized the games, I made up the silly games or called my friends, come on over, things like that. So I think that from an early childhood, that's how it gave me the wings to get comfortable. I mean, I don't know how I ended up being a yoga teacher or an officiant. It just evolved. You live long enough to evolve, right? You just,
Yes.
and you don't really know, how are you going to end up? But I feel, between both teaching and officiating, I feel really lucky to be surrounded by just love and hope and ease. Yeah,
I love that. The love, the hope, the ease.
the ease. Yeah.
When you walk into a room and you said, you've learned to read the energy, you walk into a room that's full of heightened emotion. How do you ground yourself first so that you are able to hold that space for those around you?
You know, with weddings, I don't know the people, right? So I don't know the parents. I don't know the dynamics that are going on. Part of my questionnaire is I do ask questions about the family. So anything you need me to know, whether there's some divorced parents, they may be divorced 30 years, but the father is still jealous of this one or anything. So when I know that, it helps me not to like go to a stepmom where there's problems there and congratulate her, but rather congratulate the mom. So I know a little bit about what's going on. But mostly I just try to stand back and I observe and I just watch because it's not my business really to do anything but to be present when it's time for the ceremony. So and then there's usually a wedding planner. So I just listen and I go where I'm gonna go. And yeah, it's funny because sometimes when I see pictures later on and the bride's coming down and kind of then I have to remind myself to smile, to be present. And so, yeah, it's just reading a room. I don't know if it's intuitive or you're born with it. What it's necessary, it's necessary to be present in that way.
And so I know you mentioned that you were nervous officiating the weddings, especially as you were first getting into this. And I feel certain, especially from, like you said, I just recently got married, the couples themselves are nervous too. How do you help them really stay connected to what matters when they're up there standing there with you and they're nervous and this is a huge day for them? How do you help them when they start to feel overwhelmed?
When we first meet on Zoom, I usually start the process 3 months out with the questionnaire and then the choices. And we don't know one another. But we communicate a little bit online back and forth, and I can see a softening in my couples where they won't just sign their name like Ellen. They'll say, "Thanks for everything, Marla, Ellen." They're starting to use my name, and I will email, "Hey, Ellen, I love that you chose that, but you may want to think this." So by the time we get up to the altar, there's a little bit of a trust. Okay. And I love that. I could feel us connecting. And I get there, I meet them at the rehearsal. There's always a hug, like we know one another. Um, and I've had brides tell me I'm a crier and I'm going to be really nervous. And I tell them at the rehearsal, I go, I know you may be nervous, even the ones that say they're not nervous. Look at me, look at my lips. When I say your vows and you repeat after me, I'm here for you. I can hold that space. And then I also tell my couples, you're doing it.
Yes.
You know what I mean? You're doing it. You've been preparing for this. And I'm always amazed how well they do. I recently had a wedding, and this, we have this little thing. There are some Brian Zillers out there. I
Mhm.
I haven't had a lot of them, and I was really calm with her all the time. She wanted to Zoom extra time to the rehearsal, and when it was time for her to walk down the aisle, she lit up in a way that I've never and that I have not seen her light up, going from this intensity and all these questions, like she had arrived at the top of the aisle with her dad and walked down. And I was like worried about her, being really worried and fidgety because that's how she was whenever I spoke to her. But she just lit up. So you never know what you're going to get. You just got to hold the space and do it. Sometimes I leave a wedding. It's like a C wedding, not because of me, because I got the wrong. microphone and it's reverberating and there's somebody doing fire ranging in the back. Not my fault, you know. My husband will come home and say, "How was the wedding?" And go, "Oh, it was a C because the equipment was wrong." Things that I couldn't change, but you just get in there and you do it. So yeah, just hold that space and figure it out when I get there. Yeah, and couples are nervous, but that's the way it is. I understand. They're going to be nervous. They know they're going to be nervous. They do.
Oh, yeah.
No, and I think too sometimes when the couples are up there a little paralyzed too. Well,
Oh, yeah.
right? And they do it. They get focused and they do it.
And I love that you share that, you do the questionnaire separately for each one, and then you sprinkle in those little tidbits during the ceremony. That seems like it will help ground them, maybe offer a little bit of spontaneity, like maybe a little chuckle, or it just feels like a very heart centered offering.
No, exactly. And sometimes they'll share things with me that their partner won't share. Maybe about a family member, said that his dad passed away a year or two ago. I mean, he may mention it on the questionnaire, or he may not. And so, yeah, the questionnaire is great. And I've done 125 weddings, and I give that they don't want to do it, they don't have to. But I've never had a couple not do it.
That's
And
awesome.
some of them write a novel, and some of them say, "What are the things that make you laugh?" My dog. And so you never know what you're gonna get.
No, wow, 125 weddings, and you do elopements, you do big weddings, fancy weddings, indoor, outdoor, or are they mostly outdoor?
Or outdoor mountaintop. I did a Lord of the Rings wedding where with
Cool.
the rings, and so I watched all the Lord of the Ring movies to put some of those quotes in. I love elopements. I did an elopement a couple of weeks ago. The couple were in their 70s.
Oh, cute.
70s, and it was their second marriage, and they was so excited. Yeah, wherever there's love, they want me on there. And yeah, big weddings. Big weddings sometimes feel intimidating, not so much anymore. But I also really love to is arriving at these different venues because I'll go all over Central Virginia. And Virginia is so beautiful, and you drive up to some of these places. Well, you just can't believe how beautiful it is, and the flowers and the music, and it's like I just sometimes I stop dead in my trap. Like I can't believe I get to be here and do this.
Isn't that amazing? You know you found your calling when you have that sense of fulfillment and like, wow, like technically you're working, but it just feels like it's not work.
It's good work.
It's good work.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
It's good work. Yeah, for sure.
And so I love the similarities. Yoga is union, right? To unite, to connect. And then you are uniting people in marriage, in love, in ceremony. And you shared that, it took a few years for you to get comfortable with teaching yoga, sharing yoga. It took time for you to get comfortable with officiating weddings, which I was the same way with teaching yoga. I never wanted to teach either. But then when I did my yoga teacher training, I was like, oh man, I can't not share this. I have to share this. So it's
Mhm.
like I had an obligation to share it with people. But it wasn't my intention. I had intended to take the training to deepen my own practice. But a little tangent there. Anyway, coming back to the yoga and the officiating, can you tell us a little bit more about the similarities between the two and how yoga and your background in yoga and that philosophy, that union, that connection helps support you and helps you to support your couples in officiating the wedding ceremonies?
When my couples arrive at the altar, I'll look at them. I say, "You ready?" And they go, "Mhm." I say, "Take a deep breath." And they do. So I like to think that in my yoga classes, it's breath by breath, and then in the wedding, it's heart by heart, story by story. So yeah, and community is like my native language. That comes from my New York roots. So community to me is community, whether it's on the yoga mat or it's up at the altar. It's holding space for people.
Yes, we've touched on it here and there throughout our conversation today. I just was kind of putting the two together, that, yoga and union and uniting couples and sharing their love. And I've had friends come to me and they were getting married and they're like, I teach meditation and yoga and mindfulness. And they're like, what can I do on my wedding day so that I don't freak out and have a panic attack? And same as you said, breathe, come back to your breath, find something you can focus on. And so I think that that's just so powerful.
That's with some of my couples, we'll take a moment of quiet. We'll ask everybody to take a moment to quiet and to bring to mind how they met the couple and their wishes to them so they can catch their breath when they get down the aisle and they'll, hold hands and we'll take a moment. But like I said, I think mostly they just have to do what they have to do. They're up at the altar and they do it and it's a little bit more powerless. And the other thing too is couples don't remember their ceremony after the wedding. They don't remember the words because they're kind of like numb in that moment. But one thing I do with my couples after their declaration of intent, the welcome and the declaration of intent, before we get into what I call the meat and potatoes, the rings and the vows and everything, is I offer my couples, I will say to them, before we continue, I'd like to give you a moment to see that you are here. This moment in time is going to be a blur. Take a look out at your friends and your family. Feel the air. Look at the trees. You are here. And they will turn around because they didn't see them, particularly the bride, and they're coming down the aisle. And they don't really see the people that traveled hours. And we'll turn around and look, and I go like this, and the friends will go like that. And so it makes them, I think, maybe a little bit more friends or a little bit more nervous because now they saw everybody. But it's also playful. So it's settling. Yeah.
I love that. One of the best pieces of advice I got before I got married, a couple of our friends got married a few months before we did. And she told me, your wedding day is going to go by in a blur. Same as you just said, Marla. Once you get up there, she told me, make sure that you take a moment and you look out there and you see all of your friends and your family that are there to support you, to celebrate with you. And you imprint that picture in your mind because the whole day is going to be a blur and you want that memory. So I'm so glad that you shared that.
Yeah, no, I do that with every one of my couples.
I love it.
And I often say to them, there's a lot of love and a lot of joy here. Look around. Yeah, and that is the one thing people come up to me, the guests, and say, I don't stick around after a wedding. I'm just, I leave, but they'll say, I love that because they were participating.
Yeah.
They were participating. And I know when I'm done well and I can see the guests and they're smiling and they're listening to me.
Oh, yeah. That's good.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Awesome. I love how you have shared how you use your yoga skills to create powerful and meaningful ceremonies for your couples, how you create them, the unique ways that you work with your couples to tell their love story. If our listeners want to get in touch with you, let's start with your yoga classes first. If they want to find your yoga classes, I know you said that you are on Facebook at Yoga Sparks Seville, and I will include that link in the show notes. Um, is there anything else you want to share about how they can get in touch with you or the types of classes you teach?
I don't maintain a website anymore, as far as the yoga goes. So it's just my email address if you're local to Charlottesville. I'm not doing teacher trainings or retreats at this time. Um, but as far as my weddings go, Sacred Ground Ceremonies.com/Marla if you want to get directly to me. The Sacred Ground Ceremonies. And I'm always, happy to meet on Zoom and talk to some people and, see if I'm the right fit for them. So, yeah. And one of the things I don't do, Rachel, is I don't book out like a lot of officiants a year and a half ahead. Okay. I just don't want to commit that far in advance. So I'm usually 4 or 5 months out, which is late for couples.
I
So
like that though. That's nice.
I feel ready to get started and start the communication like a year and a half out. I don't. Yeah. So when they go into the website and they send an inquiry, and we're already getting inquiries for 2027, I would just say back, I would say just I'm not available at that time, or that I don't book out that far. So, but yes, ground ceremonies. And yeah.
Wonderful. I will include that link down in the show notes.
Yeah.
As we wrap up our conversation here today, I just want to thank you. You shared a lot of insights, a lot of really powerful messaging, both around yoga, around sacred ceremonies, around presence and the power of presence. If there's anything on your heart that you would like to leave our listeners with today, is there anything that you feel would help this conversation feel a little more complete?
I keep going back to people, want to try some new things, want to try yoga, or they're afraid to do things that to throw yourself in the fire and you don't lose. You may only fall back halfway, but you learn something along the way. So try things. Um, yeah, and try some yoga, even if you've never done it and you're feeling stiff. Maybe find a teacher that supports you.
I think that's perfect. It's so easy for us to get set in our ways and to stay within the confines of our comfort zone. But if we are willing to expand that comfort zone just a little bit and find different ways to kind of push ourselves, like
Yeah,
you said, you're going to learn something about yourself. And so that in and of itself is powerful.
and you learn something, and like I said, you only fall back halfway. Which again, Rachel, was why you and I were talking earlier about some of my dad's quotes, and that was a quote my dad used to say was, "Honey, try anything in life as long as you don't give up the house or you don't put your children in danger. Because if it doesn't work out, you've learned something, and you can only fall back halfway."
I love that. I love that.
On a yoga level, it's just don't take life so seriously.
Yes. Yes. I say that all the time in my classes, especially in balance poses when we're all falling out and wobbling.
Yeah, and just, have fun. Yeah. Again, it's okay to be a C student in yoga.
Yes, exactly.
Gosh. But when I'm an officiant, I'm an A plus.
There you go. Well, Marla, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. And to all of our listeners, I'm going to link her contact information in the show notes. So be sure to check that out. And if you are getting married, be sure to check out Marla at sacredgroundceremony.com/Marla.
Virgil, it was fun, and it's always nice to see you.
Yes, you as well. Thank you. Thanks for listening to Radiantly Rooted with Rachel. If this episode brought you a little more clarity, grounding, or inspiration, I'd love it if you shared it with a friend or left a quick review. It really helps more women find this space and feel supported on their own paths. And if you are craving more soulful support, head on over to rachelhupp.com to join my email list. That's where I send free resources, gentle guidance, and invitations to go deeper. Until next time, trust yourself and root in to what matters. Because the life you want, it starts by coming back home to you.